If I had 0 followers on Instagram and had no connections with other vendors, how would I book weddings? Welcome back to another episode of our podcast. Today we're going to be diving into the question, what would we be doing if we didn't have any followers on Instagram or any real connections? But before I do that, I just wanted to say, as I'm recording this, we are only a few weeks away from launching the How to Film Weddings Mastermind 2024 class. Maybe you don't know what that is. It's a year-long training program with you in mind, a wedding filmmakers mastermind group designed by wedding filmmakers for wedding filmmakers to help you get further faster. If you want more information about our year-long program, what it entails, be sure to head over to howtofilmweddings.com/mastermind to check it out. So I'm recording this episode and the rain is pouring outside. I've got myself a cup of coffee and we're doing these shorter episodes, and I had a lot of nice feedback last week from people saying they really liked us just getting to the point and answering questions. And if you're unfamiliar with this is the second one of these I'm doing, where I'm just taking a question that was asked to us and then I'm just going to answer it on the spot. I don't really have any notes. I just want to take the question and answer it just as if you and I were in the same room together. So if you want to submit a question, we have a survey over at howtofilmweddings.com/survey. Inside of there, it says, if you could ask John and Nick one question, what would it be? And so we had this question: if you had 0 followers on Instagram and no connections with other vendors, how would I book weddings? And I think about this a lot. I talk to a lot of people that are just getting into the business and wanting to know how to get those first few weddings. And if you don't have any connections with vendors, you most likely have connections with people. And that's where I would start. I would start with connections with people that are in your circle. Maybe putting together, hopefully you have some type of a website, some type of basic about you, but maybe you don't. But if I were starting from square one, I would start with who I know. What connections do I have? Does my cousin know people? Or do I have friends that are in college that have other friends? Do I know somebody that's getting married? Do I know somebody that is a photographer or a venue owner? Who do you know that can maybe get you a handshake to somebody that is getting married? That's the first step that I would consider doing. And maybe if that's your first step, you're going to have to do some type of free work or helpful work for super cheap. I know my first wedding, I think I charged $500 for, and they asked me to film their wedding. They were in a youth group that I was helping lead, and they were getting married, and that's kind of how I got my start. But if I had no connections at all, I would start with connections of people I do have and see if they are connected and can open a door for you. The other thing I would say, if I was just getting started and had 0 followers and 0 work to show, we say this a lot in our mastermind group, but creating content is going to be a huge way for you to get exposure. We talk about building a funnel a lot on our podcast, inside of our course, and in our mastermind, but you have to get awareness that you exist, and you can't really do that to a larger extent if you don't have any work to show. What happens if you do a handshake with somebody that you know that knows somebody else, and they say, well, let me see some of your work? If you don't have any work to show, any branding to show, anything at all, you're gonna probably strike out. So one thing we recommend doing is trying to set up either styled shoots or going alongside somebody that's already shooting at a wedding, reaching out to a planner or photographer and seeing if you can just film a little bit for free and giving the couple something free so that you have something in your reel. As you get going in your brand, maybe you're just starting, you need to know who you want to serve. And that might take a little while for you to get to know. And so that's okay. And doing things for free or cheap are going to help you to make those connections and make those first steps. And so we tell people that it's worth investing dollars into a styled shoot. Maybe you hire a photographer and say, hey, well, I'll pay you to collab with me on doing a styled shoot, or a planner, or maybe you're investing some dollars into getting those networking things going. And if I didn't have any connections with any other vendors or bookings, another thing that comes to my mind is like, in your city, in your town, looking up any wedding networking events. Maybe jump in our Facebook group and see if there's anybody that is in your town that could help take you under their wing and say, oh, come to this gathering, come to this thing, and I'll introduce you to some people. It's just, there's something in us, in our nature, that if somebody just cold calls us, we want to put up a defense, right? We don't want somebody just to call us and ask for a sale. But if somebody that we know tells us about something they love, we're much more likely to purchase from that company or brand or go see that movie or whatever it is. And that's kind of the thing. Getting in the room with the right people, getting in front of the right people, also having work that they can see so they can say, oh, I would hire John to do that. That's some pretty cool work. Those are the very basic things. So if the question is, if I had 0 followers on Instagram and no connections with other vendors, how would I book weddings? I would start by those things that I mentioned. I would get in the room with people. I would look at my connections and see who they're connected to. I would post on social media asking for anyone that's looking for maybe a free or cheap wedding or some kind of connection. And then I would make sure I was at networking events, getting to know people, getting to be in the room, offering your services, go to venues, see if they need a virtual tour, do things, get movement going. Motion causes emotion, and just start taking those calculated steps to getting some of that work. Be somebody that's great to be around, and sooner or later, you're going to start getting some followers. You're going to have content from these shoots that you can put out on the internet. You can put them on social media. You could start running ads, or you could start creating content that is growing the top of your funnel. And that is how you get going. And the boulder is hard to push up the mountain, but once you get up and going, you get that flywheel turning, you're not going to have to ever look back, because after you get those first few bookings, after you get those first few people knowing you exist, knowing your brand exists, you're going to attract more of what you're showing on your social media. And the more you stay consistent in front of other vendors in your town, getting to know people, being a good person and not just looking for the sale, you're going to do just fine. Okay, that's all I have for today. What do you think of these episodes? It's very short, to the point, but I love this idea of answering one question at a time. And as a reminder, at the top of the episode, I mentioned our Mastermind group. Our Mastermind 2024 class is opening for enrollment at the end of January. And I think if you're listening to this and this is helpful to you, you might want to consider joining. Our applications will open here in a couple weeks. If you head over to howtofilmweddings.com/mastermind, we'll have all the info for you there. Also, the last thing, the one little thing, if you like this content, if this is helpful to you, if you want more, send me a message on Instagram at howtofilmweddings and just let me know that you listened to this episode and that was helpful to you. That's all I have for now. And until next time, we'll see you.